Zach, we have been discussing new cars a lot on the podcast lately, and I think it's an exciting time to talk about Jaguar.
Gabe, I'm always interested in talking about new cars and hearing about potentially what you might be buying, right?
Oh, there's no way I'm spending money on a dropping cash on a Jaguar. That's definitely out of my price range. But we had to bring this up at the top of the podcast this week because it is the thing that is being talked about in basically all marketing circles, which is the Jaguar rebrand. I know you've seen this. I know you have thoughts. I have thoughts too. I'm curious though to hear yours just initially on the what you thought when you initially saw some of the rebrand that they released this week.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Gabe, but there's something not right here, and I'm convinced. We kind of talked about this, but I said a few days ago, I was like, I'm convinced this is an attention grab from the marketing team and not a real thing per se. But it's very interesting. It's basically become this widespread meme of a brand. I don't know about you, Gabe, but like my friends and I, this isn't something we talk about on the weekend. This specific car brand, but now we are. So that's kind of my thought. Is I think there's something going on here. Not to put my conspiracy theory hat on, but the marketer
Put your
in me isn't
tinfoil hat
buying
in,
it.
on. Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because the text that I sent you a text of a link of a goodness gracious, can't talk today. I sent you a tweet of somebody talking about the 10D chess move, which was basically Jaguar doing this on purpose and then reverting back. And the classic example of this is Coke and New Coke. And there's this hysterical conspiracy theory that Coke released New Coke so that they could just roll out the original formula and gain a bunch of sales. And people are saying that maybe this is the same thing for Jaguar. I think we might be giving people too much credit, man. I feel like sometimes people make bad decisions. And in this case, it was a really, really bad decision to launch this Jaguar rebrand. And I, there's a whole like cultural component of this too that I do not want to touch with a 10-foot pole. So I'm going to go ahead and stay away from that. But I did bring up with you that I wanted to talk about the website that Jaguar launched as part of this rebrand because I despise it with every fiber of my being for so many reasons. Have you spent some time looking through this and what are your thoughts?
I've spent a little bit of time, and I would like to dedicate more time. But the time I did spend on this website, I just got more and more confused as I scrolled down the page.
So, and this is the part that I think has irritated people and been so confusing is that on this website that we're talking about, and I would recommend that everybody go check it out because it's just an absolute delight. But there's no cars for starters, like at all, and or discussion of cars or how you could potentially buy a car or anything. And it seems very weird that a brand who sells cars would not be discussing said car at all on this fancy new landing page that they set up to, in theory, sell cars.
Well, let's talk about the brand too. You have this whole new logo, and if you put that logo in front of me and said, "What is this company?" The new logo that is, I, to be honest, I don't know if I would associate it with the car itself. With the Jaguar,
No.
and then the logo. Like, I don't think I would make that immediate association. Now, of course, now we know what it is, but it seems so off-brand. But again, there's supposed to be this big announcement here in the coming week or two about what this brand is and what's next for the company. So certainly we will learn more then, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a very interesting lesson in branding that we are watching unfold. And one of the examples I saw, so with their new font and their new logo, the everyone on Twitter, and by everyone I mean the people in this thread, were talking about, look at the companies that have gone from this unique brand to
Mm-hmm.
just this simple sans serif typeface. Remember Facebook, Meta, Microsoft did this, Pinterest did this. Um, there's so many on this
I
list,
think
but
Airbnb did this too somewhat recently where they changed some of their stuff, maybe even Uber. Like there's been a lot of brands that have moved to more of this generic, even some of the like fashion brands, like I can't remember which brand it was, but even some of the like higher end brands have started to move to these more generic fonts. And I'm not sure people love it.
The best joke I saw was on Apple though, because typically with Apple, their logo is the icon, the Apple
Hmm.
icon, and people will say, no, they should probably just spell it out and use the Jaguar font. But anyway, Gabe,
I don't think
neither
they're
of
going to
us
be
are in
doing
the
that.
market for buying that type of car,
No.
but I think we're both in the market when it comes to websites because we spend. I don't even know. Like, I don't even want to calculate this, Gabe, but we spend so much time on different websites, whether it's a BSP or a broadband website or just random websites you use throughout the day. But I
Agreed.
I've always been very critical when it comes to web design and design in general. But again, we spend so much time on these websites that we've learned a lot of best practices and we've learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. And I think
Agreed.
that's really what we want to talk about today is what's the state of your website?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I always joke, you and I joke a lot about Excel, right? And I spent a lot of my career, especially the first part of my career, every day in Excel. And I always say that if you spend many, many hours a day doing something, you're going to get pretty good at it. And I feel like I'm pretty darn good at Excel, not to like pat myself on the back too much, but I've just spent I got a lot of reps. I kind of feel that way about websites now at this point, especially broadband service provider websites, Zach. As you said, we spend a lot of our lives on broadband service provider websites. I don't know that there's many people who spend more time than probably you and I, maybe a few other folks within Calix here, but I feel like we're uniquely qualified to talk through some of these pet peeves, so to speak, maybe things
Mhm.
that we would love to see folks doing different or better, and talk through what opportunities we see for folks to improve, how they're engaging with their customers on web, how they're driving customers through the funnel with the website that they're putting out there.
Let's do it. And
Let's get into it.
I want to like back up my credibility with I've led a website redesign project, and at the time the website was coming up on like 10 years old. So you can imagine what that facelift or that transformation looks like. But I think there's like this general consensus in the web design community, if such a community exists, but you really should be evaluating your website every 2 to 3 years. And it doesn't need to be a
Mm-hmm.
full redesign. But I mean, think of how fast technology adopts. Gabe, the iPhone that came out this year is an iPhone 16. Do you still want an iPhone 13 in 2025, kind of
I
thing?
don't. I
Like,
have a 14, and it kind of makes me sad every day because I'm not going to upgrade for a few more months. So yes.
well, that Apple Intelligence is waiting. But I mean, that's just an example here of how often technology evolves. But think about your website. People go to your website every day. And the example I used a few podcast episodes ago was now I'm trying to remember what it was. It just escaped me. But I talked about your website being your digital storefront. Like if you don't have a
Yes.
physical retail location, or even if you do, people are probably going to your website before they step foot in your store, if they even step foot in your store. So you want to treat it with the same level of quality and everything as you would your own retail store. So Gabe, let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about. I love. I think we should just start with the top 5 pet peeves. And
Yeah, let's
Gabe,
do it. Let's get into it.
I did tell you today. I was like, man, we only 5. Like we have to stop at 5 because
I could have
it's.
gone on for a lot longer, but we got to keep these episodes tight, Zach, because nobody wants to listen to us rant for like 3 hours.
I know. So maybe someday we'll just do like a week-long episode and we just talk about like we'll just nitpick every website. But Gabe, go ahead and kick things off with us here.
Okay, so I'm gonna start at the top of the list here, which is calls to action near the bottom of the page. Nothing drives me crazier than when I go to a website and there's no CTA anywhere near the top, and I start scrolling and I keep scrolling and I keep scrolling and I don't find a call to action anywhere. Ultimately, the purpose of your website is to likely sell something to somebody or get somebody to take some sort of action, right? Maybe it's not to sell them something that at that exact time, but it may be just moving them at least further down the funnel. So people are not going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of a page to see a call to action. If you don't have a call to action above the fold, you are leaving clicks on the table, so to speak, right?
And Gabe,
Where
the one thing I want to add to that is, well, how do you know people aren't going to scroll all the way down the page? And I think we would be sorry if we didn't recommend one
yes,
of our
we would be
favorite tools.
remiss.
Yes, that's
Yes.
the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
Microsoft Clarity, Hotjar. There's so many heat mapping session recording tools out there that will show you how people engage with your website. So definitely go out and check those out. And if you're using them on your website, use that data to optimize the visitor experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I've talked about this one ad nauseum, but I'm just going to mention it one more time, which is, as you said, Zach, Microsoft Clarity. Great tool, great product, really good insight into what people are clicking on. So heat maps, how deep they're scrolling down the page, so you can get a much better understanding. The statistics that I've looked at, Zach, and I think you can probably back this up as well, is I think it's something like 50% of people will literally not even scroll once. They will just come and look at that top section, that, that above the fold, and 50% of people will not go below that. So if you have any really good content below the fold, it's likely that 50% of your website visitors are not seeing it. But set up a tool like Clarity. It's super easy. It's completely free. Definitely would recommend doing that, just so you can at least get an idea of how far are people scrolling down your pages, and then you can adjust accordingly based on data and insight, instead of just making guesses about it.
And not to get like super geeky here, but I've seen this mistake. It's actually kind of funny to me, but don't position things absolute on a page so it looks, perfect on your page, but then when you go to a phone or a different monitor, it changes the size. And the reason I bring that up is when we design our websites, we're on desktop for the most part. We're building these websites on desktop. But the reality is most of your users are not going to be on desktop. They're going to be on their mobile phones. And surely you'll have data on that as well. But just keep in mind, what does that mobile experience look like? And how does my content optimize for that individual?
I'm so glad you brought this up. And I know we talked about this in one of our pricing psychology episodes, when we were talking about should pricing should it increase right to left, or should you have your most expensive tier on the left and then have it descending from there? This is so important for mobile as well. If you have your least expensive service tier or service good, whatever, that you're selling as the first thing on the left-hand side of the screen, well, when that moves to mobile, when people are scrolling down, that's the first thing they're going to see. So they might not even realize that you have other options, because again, people are super lazy and they're not necessarily going to continue to scroll down. So I'm really glad you brought up the mobile piece. I actually meant to put that in the outline here and just completely forgot, because it seems like such a given, such a fundamental at this point, but we do still see a lot of situations where websites are not optimized for mobile.
Absolutely. And moving on to the next point here, calls to action. And this is something, Gabe, we've talked a lot about on with different platforms, Meta
Mm-hmm.
including. But I think one of my
I think we
least
talked
favorite,
about it in email too, when we were talking email marketing as well, to make
yeah,
sure you have different calls to action.
one of my least favorite calls to action is legitimately learn more. Everyone uses it. What does that even mean? And we'll have some examples here that we'll talk about from the real world that are not necessarily broadband, but that call to action is just so boring and overused.
Agreed. I think overused is a great word there. It's boring. It's everywhere. So think, when we say these are generic calls to action, make them more actionable calls to action. So what is it that the person is going to get? If you were selling a parent package to people, and that included parental controls to make sure their kids were safe online, make the call to action, keep my kids safe online, or protect my kids today, or something like that, right? I'm a terrible copywriter on the fly, but
Well, hey,
point
one thing you
being,
did,
lean
Gabe,
into
is
that.
you added that urgency too. In that
Mm-hmm.
second call to action you made,
Yes.
protect my kids today, right? That's something that I'm sure as a parent would speak way better to you than learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, much more so than just the generic learn more. So again, think about what specific action or what benefit is the customer going to get out of clicking on this button, and make sure that you're tying the description of that call to action to that. So that's a big one for me.
And the next one here, Gabe, I think I remember like talking to you about this one a few years ago. But when your business, in our case, we work with a lot of BSPs who have specific addresses. You have to input the address to see the pricing. I'm not a big fan of that, because for multiple reasons. One is you're not really hiding anything, you're not concealing anything, because you can just put an address in and there you go into the page. But also, I think it's important to share that information with your customers. And there's going to be cases where maybe you have different pricing in one area or another, and there's different technology. There's going to be those situations, but I think having that pricing and that information not being hidden from from your visitors is critical, and also not having so many clicks to get to said information.
Hmm. I feel like this one is a very hot topic in the broadband service provider space because people will push back and say, "Well, I don't have the same technology in every area," or like you said, maybe I'm offering different prices in different areas based on the competitive landscape. I understand that pushback, and I think that's fair. However,
Absolutely.
however, I still think there's a lot to be said for putting a range. If you came to a website and it said our internet is priced somewhere between this and this, right? 65 and $100. You're at least giving people an idea of what it is that they're going to be paying for that service. So you give them a range, right? And then you say, if you would like to learn more about the specific offers in your area, enter this address or click here or do something else. But to ask people to give you information about them before you even showed them the price, I think is a lot to ask. I actually was on a website, Zach, the other day where you had to enter the address. Then it took you to a form that said, give me your name, first name, last name, email address, and phone number before you could even see pricing. How many people do you think will actually go through and do all of that
Well,
and give all of that information?
it's funny you bring that example up because, in my car shopping, one of the things I looked at was my favorite car brand is Toyota, but one of the cars I was looking at was a Toyota Rav hybrid, and I'm very particular with my vehicles, so I'm not going to compromise on features that I want or colors that I want. I think we made that clear last week. But when I would go to Toyota's inventory lookup, there were so many dealers around me. Again, going back to our car dealers conversation, who would just not put the pricing. But then I would scroll
Mm-hmm.
down a little bit, and there's a dealer, 50 miles south that would put the pricing. And Gabe, side by side, I have one dealer that shows me pricing and one that does not show me pricing for the same vehicle. Which one do you think I clicked on?
Uh, Without question, you're going to click on the one that has pricing probably 100
Absolutely.
out of 100 times.
Absolutely. And that's an example just from a few weeks ago. So, not broadband example too, but it happens. People do this. And I think there's a transparency component. And again, Gabe, I'm sure we upset someone by saying, make your pricing transparent, but, really consider what the end experience is like for your website visitors.
Yeah. And this is also where I would say measure how many people are actually coming to your website. How many new visitors are you getting every month, or unique visitors are you getting every month? And then how many people are entering an address on a form so that you can tell them the privilege of how much money they're going to pay you. I guarantee you it's a lot less. So maybe do some testing, just try it out for a month, put a range in there, see how that improves your clicks to people actually providing that information and then going deeper. But to just be to just have it be completely unknown, I think is a big ask for consumers to give information before you've provided them any insight into, is it $1,000? Is it $100? I have no idea. I just have to give you information again for the privilege of you telling me how much it's going to cost me to give you money. Like that just seems wild to me.
And speaking of information, let's talk about too much information. And by that,
Yes.
I mean, well, exactly that, too much information about your product. And Gabe, we've seen this. We've talked about this at some different presentations as well. But the technical jargon, I see this a lot in the broadband space, and we can talk about the Apple example I'm thinking of as well. But when you talk about the fiber being a single strand of glass, the width of a human hair, things like that, for the most part, your consumers are not interested in that. Now, if you have like an ultra connected package on your website where you're really getting into the Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7 details and things like that, okay, maybe. But for the most part, again, I'll go back to my grandparents' example. If my grandparents are buying Wi-Fi, they're not going to be looking at the singular strand of glass. That means nothing to them. So I think there's a point where, that's a little too much. And the example I like to think of as well on this, not that it's too much information here, but when you buy a laptop from Apple or really any company, but I'm thinking of Apple specifically, you can choose between 256 gigabytes, 500 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, and 2 terabytes. I saw a meme this week, and it's like, oh, I'm getting the 256 because that's the biggest number. That's the biggest one. And I think that there's a part where too much of that technical talk is going to confuse your buyer, right? Like Gabe, I feel like, again, we're pretty technical people, so I always go for the 512 gigabyte laptop, right? That's a good storage space for me. But Not everyone buying a laptop from Apple knows how much storage they need, or in this case, if you're buying, internet from a broadband service provider, um, is the glass strand the size of a hair, or is it a copper wire that was placed 20 years ago? Like what are we communicating here?
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if Apple would be better off doing something like store 10,000 photos or store 1,000 videos or
I think
something
of the
like
iPod.
that. Yeah, yeah, 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? That's a great tagline that was for the iPod, because I think with that it was a new product, and so people didn't really understand how am I going to interact with this thing. So that's a great example of shifting it to what am I actually going to do with this thing? I'm going to put 1,000 songs in my pocket, but it's yeah. So to just reiterate this point, Zach and I see so much technical jargon on broadband service provider websites, especially talking about fiber, talking about the detailed benefits of fiber, talking about latency, and how you can download 10 download a song in 4.6 seconds, things like that. While these things may make sense to technical folks who work inside the industry, to the average consumer they don't mean anything. So definitely one of my pet peeves big time is way too much technical jargon on some of these websites.
I love the example you just gave of downloading a song or downloading a movie. Gabe, I have never in my life downloaded a song or downloaded a movie. It's all about streaming, right? So
Yes,
let's talk
exactly.
about that experience. But the last few here, and again, Gabe told me I had to, wrap it up pretty quickly here with the five pet peeves.
I'm
But
sorry, we got to limit it to 5. Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
exactly. So the last one here, and we kind of touched on this, so I won't dive too deep into this, but I think we should absolutely talk about this in a future episode. But is looking at your navigation, how many clicks does it take to get to different areas of your website? I just had an example with a colleague I was working with this week. We were talking about our parental controls and how to drive traffic to this page. But when we went to the website, we couldn't even find the page ourselves. So
Mm.
there's a focus here on making sure that your navigation is, I would say, less than 3 clicks is kind of the sweet spot there, but
I
not
was going to
taking over
ask
your
you that,
website.
Zach. I'm not I do not purport to be a website design guru, right? Like I definitely know things that drive me a little bit insane, and when I'm looking at these, but I was curious to hear what your number was there, so it's less than 3 is sort of
I
the
think
sweet spot that you want to
I
shoot
think
for.
that's the sweet spot. And
Yeah.
and, and if someone's disagreeing with me right now, I'd absolutely love to hear, what your thoughts are as well. But I mean, if you think about that, like, let's go back to the Apple website. If I'm going to buy a Mac, how many clicks does it take to get to the Mac part of the website? Well, I'll say it's two.
I was
Number
going to say
one,
probably 2, right? Click up
I'm
in
going
the
to click
header and
Mac
then click. Yep.
and then click the product, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. So that's how simple it needs to be. Or think of Google even too. If you're searching for something, and you go to Google's homepage, you type in your question, you hit enter, call that a click, or you can click images and news, things like that. But it's just a simple navigation. And just to wrap it up too, Gabe, I did do kind of 5A, 5B, 5C just to make sure I got
I
these
know
in
you're
here.
trying to sneak a couple extra ones in there.
but I'm just going to quickly highlight these and then we'll talk about them later. But images and video, high quality. It got to be high quality, but do not sacrifice on your loading time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a lot of our listeners may have fiber today, but hey, not everyone has that best connection. So make sure your load times are tight. And then the last one here, I think there's a lot of values in customer journeys. Specifically, I hate to call them pop-ups, Gabe, but I can't think of another term right now.
Yeah.
But you can't be too aggressive with
Zero
those.
party data capture forms. How about that?
Well, that's a lot to say. So that's kind of my 5A and B there. But again, those are topics for another day. But we also have some examples we want to talk through today, which I'll talk about the image and video quality in more depth. But those are kind of the pet peeves Gabe and I have had.
So
Now,
do
what
we
does
need to
good
turn
look like?
positive now, Zach? Yeah, let's turn positive around what good looks like and
Oh,
things
sure,
that
we could just
we
end
do
it
enjoy.
there. We're just negative today.
No, let's talk about some positive stuff. Let's talk about how we could, things that we do enjoy seeing. And I know one of the ones that I really enjoy, and I know you enjoy seeing as well, is comparison tables. I think there's a lot of opportunity to lean more into comparison tables. And when I say comparison tables, what I specifically mean is here is a list of the features and benefits that my product or service will deliver. Here is what I do. Here is what my competitor does. And here's all the ways that I am better. And I don't see a lot of BSPs doing that. And you don't have to call out your competitor by name. If you're competing against Comcast, you don't have to say Comcast. You can say cable provider or
The
large,
other guys.
the exactly. You can just even be more generic with the other guys. Yeah, you don't have to call them out by name, but I think it's a great opportunity to really lean into the benefit that your customer is going to get from going with you and talk to some of those specific value props of how you are different. So I can't, I could never see enough comparison tables. I love them. I think people should be doing them all over the place.
As long as you don't have to scroll 6 miles to get through the whole table.
Yes, agreed. Yes. Yeah, let's
Gabe,
get them higher up on the page too.
yeah, and we talked about call to action, so I won't dive too deep into this one unless there's anything you want to add to that. But if you have a call to action on your page, what's the actionable outcome? And again, like I mentioned, what's the urgency behind that?
Yeah. And the only additional thing I'll make around the actionable outcomes piece is this doesn't have to be just for when you're selling. It doesn't have to be just when somebody's clicking effectively a buy now button. It can even be for other things further up in the funnel. Let's say that you're a broadband service provider who's going into a new area and you're doing construction and you want to get people to sign up before you've actually done anything so you can get an understanding of what the demand is going to be like. Okay, well, great. Well, again, what benefit is that customer going to get from signing up early? So think about that. Think about what action you'd want somebody to take there. Is it a get pre-registered or pre-register today, or again, what is the benefit that they're going to get out of that? Be first on the list today, right? Whatever it is, like think about some kind of more actionable outcome. Even if it's not buying, it still can be a great opportunity to get people to increase the click rates of those buttons by making it more actionable.
Yeah, I was trying not to laugh, but all I could think of during this was get single strand glass fiber to your house today as a call to action. Don't do that. But
yeah, don't do that. Get symmetrical fiber that's thinner than a strand of hair to your house today. Yeah, don't do that.
oh my goodness. The last one here for the good before we get into our examples here is testimonials, and I think everything we talk about here, Gabe, with our real examples is going to have some kind of testimonial component. But people love feedback. I mean, if I go to a website, I mean, typically I'll probably start with Google, and then I see the reviews there. We talk about Amazon having the product reviews, but have those customer testimonials on your website. When I did a website redesign in the banking finance industry, one of the things we did was at the bottom of our website, we had like a scrolling banner kind of thing that would pull in our Google reviews and, positive feedback from customers. And luckily we were in a position where most of the feedback was positive, but it's great to highlight that, especially, if you're a smaller business competing against the big guys. These are just some great ways to highlight how you are better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Google reviews can be so beneficial in so many ways. I actually I was traveling this week, Zach, and I was driving from one place to another with a colleague, and we were looking for a place to grab lunch. And so I just pulled up Google and started searching for kind of the area that we were in, and found a place that had 4.9 stars. Didn't have a ton of reviews. It had like a couple hundred, which was enough for me. But it had 4.9. I was like, all right, well, we got to go there. And the place was super, super weird. The food was decent. It was not terrible, but it wasn't anything like amazing. I was surprised the place had 4.9, but I would have never ended up there if it didn't have 4.9 stars for sure.
That
No
reminds me of
chance.
a kind of the joke we have, Gabe, is what do you trust more, one 5-star review or 300 3.5-star reviews thing? But
Yeah.
that's a conversation for another day, because I want to talk about Crumble now, and I missed an opportunity.
You're just pissed that we didn't talk about it last week.
Exactly. I missed an opportunity to talk about it last week, and then we were talking about customer experience last week. So if you missed that episode, we'll finish this one and then go listen to that one. But I was thinking about the customer experience at Crumble specifically. So many people buy on their phones or order ahead on the app where you could just show up. But I was talking to Gabe about the experience when you show up to the Crumble. You can see right into the kitchen. You can see them making the cookies. Obviously, the smell. It's just a great experience. But we're not here to talk about cookies. We're here to talk about websites. So let's talk about the Crumble website. Number one, just look at the Crumble brand. It is, lack of better term, solid. You go to the Crumble website, you see that pink, that gray that they use on all of their branding. You know exactly where you're at. But at the top of their page, they also have this I would say it's probably one of the higher quality videos I've seen embedded into a website. But you have this video that kind of loops showing you the menu of the week. And for those of you who are new to Crumble or haven't been on a meeting with me, Crumble updates their menu every Sunday. So, at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, there's a new menu. So the new video comes out, but it's a great way for them to highlight their products of the week. And then with that too, they've got some very clear call to actions. Now, Crumble's unique; it's food, so it's order now. They do have a few learn more buttons to understand more about the product, like health and nutrition facts. But they also have the social proof, the reviews from people who bought said cookie. And one of the things I love about that is to leave a review, you have to download the app. So they have this nice call to action that's talking about how, to leave a review, download the app. And that's how Crumble, that's where Crumble is driving traffic, is into that mobile app. But I think it's great from a business standpoint as well, because when I get Crumble, I use the app, I'll select my pickup time and, come, but it lets them kind of prepare ahead of time as well. So there's just some operational efficiencies there as well.
For
And then on
sure.
this website as well, just a simple navigation. I think there's 4 buttons: order now, locations, catering, and gifts. And to be honest with you, I did not know Crumble had catering until I kind of validated this on their website. So now I'm thinking of a lot right now. But that's kind of the Crumble website. Now, there is one more component that I want to talk about today. And it's a quote I said on last week's podcast. I was talking about an emotional connection with a brand versus a transactional relationship. And Gabe, I think the example we used was, you want to see, as a customer, who you're doing business with, as more than, oh, I'm just sending money to them every month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just money comes in, money goes out, kind of thing. But with Crumble, that emotional connection, and I'm not just speaking positively because I'm hoping for a Crumble sponsorship here, but as I mentioned, that new menu comes out at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and there's a couple things that does. Number one is, you kind of anticipate it, builds that anticipation of, oh, the new menu is coming out here at 6 o'clock. But also going back to that sense of urgency, the menu changes every week. So throughout the week, as time winds down, here it's Friday now, tomorrow's Saturday, they're going to want to get rid of their inventory. And if, as the consumer, it's your last chance to buy that week's product from Crumble.
Mm-hmm.
So I think combined, again, what we just talked about was not only their website, but the actual, I think, customer experience that the website is driving. But I think that's just a great example.
Yeah, agreed. It's definitely a good one to go back, as you said at the beginning of that, right? The brand is so strong. You see that pink, the the pink box that all those cookies come in. It's just spot on. I wonder if they would. I wonder if they do better with the call to action of get cookies now versus
Or
order now.
like hungry question mark. I don't know
Yeah,
like what your call to action would be, but
yeah.
um, if
Be fun to test.
I was, well, if we have to test the call to actions, we test the cookies as well. It sounds like a reasonable
Absolutely,
expense to me.
100%.
So after you go to Crumble, the next example I have is Quip, and that is
What a nice juxtaposition there.
this
Ruin
wasn't
your
planned.
teeth, fix your teeth.
This wasn't planned, Gabe. We are getting very good at this. So Quip is toothbrushes, toothpaste, a hygiene company, and it's a direct to consumer. So you can go on, buy your toothbrush, and then every few months they're sending you the latest supplies, floss, toothpaste, everything. And the reason I brought this example is because a lot of our listeners come from the broadband service industry. And what that means is we have a lot of recurring revenue businesses listening to this podcast, which is what Quip is, right? You can go to their website and you can buy a single toothbrush, and that's the end of your relationship with Quip. But you could do that with Walmart. You could go to Target and buy a toothbrush. Like that's not their business model. So
it's not the unique. It's not the unique thing that they're bringing to the table.
Exactly.
Right? They're bringing something very different.
Exactly. So that recurring revenue business they have here is to get that subscription to you, and then maintain that relationship. So one of the things they do on their website is they encourage what they call a refill plan. And whether it's using discounts or other tactics, they're trying to bring you back and prevent you from making a one-time purchase. So the discount I always see is like, oh, this is $8 when you subscribe every 3 months, or you can buy it for $12 up front, kind of thing. The other thing they do, again, being in a recurring revenue business, is the upselling. They have a lot of different ways to encourage bundling their products to increase the average order value. And I think this is
Mm-hmm.
crucial because when you go to their website, you okay, let's say you're going to buy a toothbrush. Well, now, maybe you need some toothpaste to go with this, or hey, we have this new mouthwash, or hey, get the whole kit with the floss and everything else, a travel bag for this discounted price. So there's a big upselling component to their business as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing I think about with these recurring revenue businesses, especially ones like this where it's a disposable good that you're still buying in a recurring revenue way. You know what you're really selling there, Zach? You're selling time savings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go to the store and buy an individual toothbrush, or oh crap, I'm out of toothpaste, now I got to run to the store and do it? You're saving people time. It's a huge convenience factor. That's a huge reason why I have things, like vitamins or those types of things on just regular order from Amazon, because then they just show up and I don't have to think about it, right? It's just that recurring revenue strategy for them, even though it's a good that I'm using, right? In that case vitamins, in your case toothbrushes, toothpaste, floss, stuff like that, right? But you're saving people a ton of time by making it easy for them to buy.
Yeah. And the last thing I have on Quip, and then we have one more example for you, is again that social proof. Underneath every product on their website, they have the star rating and then the actual user reviews as well. So again, that social proof. Feel like now that we talk through these, people will go out and start to recognize them even more. But value the importance of having these on your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So the last one is one that I threw in here, Zach, and I would encourage everybody to just go look at these websites and go navigate around a little bit, look and see, what these look like. How could you forklift some of these ideas from each one of these websites and potentially put it into your own business? So the last one that I have here is a company called Brightland, which they say sell high end olive oil, vinegar, honey. Really good stuff.
A
The
very different
Calabrian
example from cookies,
I,
but okay.
but it's still delicious food. I mean, it's just other kind of food. So they have this Calabrian chili olive oil that I absolutely love. I put it on pasta, I put it on pizza, sometimes put it on eggs. It's delicious. It's not too spicy, but it's a little bit of heat to it. It's fantastic. So this is a company. Again, really lean into social proof. Right at the top of their page, they have a banner right there, right by the call to action that says over 2,000 5-star reviews. So they're calling out that large number of people that have given them 5-star reviews. They also have a clear call to action above the fold that is shop now. So if you want to purchase this product, there's a clear CTA button right at the top. You don't have to scroll down. But when you do scroll down just a little bit, just right below the fold, they have what they call featured categories. And these are things like their best sellers, and they're right below the fold. And they've also bundled these together to make ordering easier. So much like you were talking about with Quip, where it's floss and toothpaste and toothbrush and travel bag, and just bundling these things together. Not only does that increase average order value, but it also just makes it easier for the customer to buy things that might go well together. Oh, you want a little bit of vinegar to go with that delicious olive oil that you just bought? Okay, great. Now you can make a lovely salad dressing, right, with all of these ingredients that you just purchased. So putting those featured categories or bundles together, again, makes it easier for the customer to buy. They're happier, and better for the company because you're increasing average order value. So I definitely would recommend going and checking out Brightland. I think their product's really good, and I would highly recommend the olive oil. It is delicious, but the website is really nice as well. It just, I think, lays things out really, really well, both from a social proof perspective as well as a direct calls to action, really getting people into the buying process.
Well, Gabe, you highly recommend olive oil, and I highly recommend giant cake-sized cookies. So, if you're listening still, you can make your own pick. But as Gabe mentioned, go out, check out these websites, and I think it just goes back to when you're browsing the internet. Uh, think about the websites you visit. Think about what that experience is like. I do think Apple has a truly good website experience. There was an odd phase there for a few years. This is years ago now, or in the last 5 years, where like their page was like scrolling like 6 miles long, and they've kind of moved away from that a little bit. But go out and see what your experience is on your own website. Get your phone out, use your own website, and think about what that customer experience is. Are they having to click through a lot of things? Are they being spammed by pop-ups? But audit your own website. think about what Gabe and I have talked about today, look at some of these examples, and see how you can optimize your own experience.
Can I have one more thing on there, Zach? Because I love
I'll allow
everything
it.
that you just said. And I'll have one last thing. Give your phone or your computer to a friend or colleague or relative and ask them to do something on the website and see if they can figure it out. And if they can't, then you got a problem.
I have a good story, but I'm not going to say it because not only are we out of time, but you have to come back to next week's episode to get this story
Man,
about
look
giving
at
your
you.
giving your phone to someone else to see what that experience
Look at you.
is
You're like a professional podcaster now, creating interest and urgency in the next one. I love it, Zach.
Professional
You're just a pro.
podcaster. I'm not a professional anything, Gabe, but just a marketing professional. But thank you for tuning in to Buffering. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give us a follow on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Gabe and I on LinkedIn.